What just happened? Hi, my name is Meherbasan from O-Level. Today I'm gonna teach you about friction and frictional force. So let's start the lesson. So what is frictional force? Friction is the resistance to the motion of an object moving relative to another. It is not a fundamental force like gravity or electromagnetism. Instead, scientists believe it the result of electromagnetic attraction between charged particles into two touching surfaces. Or we can say friction opposes motion. It causes an object that moves along a surface to slow down and eventually stop. Friction occurs between the tires and the road. Friction is the force that opposes the motion between two surfaces sticking or touching together. As we can see, air friction affects the falling of the object. Air friction affects the motion of falling object by acting against the force of the gravity. Friction occurs between the floor and the feet of the table. Friction is a force resist or oppose the relative sliding movement of surface in contact with another. Let's see an example of friction. What are the effects that can affect the friction? See three situations which help us to find out the factors that affect friction. The first one, we can see a smooth object is traveling in a smooth surface. Second one, we can see a rough object traveling in a smooth surface, or a smooth object is traveling in a rough surface. In the third position, we can see a rough object is traveling in a rough surface. So can you tell me in which three have the highest friction? As we can see, number 3 has the highest friction. And tell me which one has the lowest friction. As we can see, the first one has the lowest friction. What is the factor that is affecting the friction? The factor that is affecting the friction is the nature of both surfaces. The surfaces of the object or the surfaces of the surface that is traveling. It depends on the roughness or smoothness. See another example. As we can see, there is a table and two objects with different mass. The first object has 2 kg and the second one has 5 kg. So tell me which object will go the farthest. As we can see, the second object which has 2 kg will go the farthest because of the friction. The force with which two surfaces are pressed together creating friction is that because of the second object has a greater mass, which creating a huge force on the table surface, which creating number of interlocking between the surfaces, which creating more irregularities. So we can see there are two factors that affect friction. The number one is nature of both surfaces and the forces with which the two surfaces are pressed together. What if there is very less friction? Walking on concrete is easier than walking on the ice because ice has very less friction, or we can see ice is so smooth. Ice has very low resistance force than the concrete, which our feet get slipped down. What are the 4 types of friction? There are 4 types of friction in the world. Number 1, rolling friction. A friction force produced when an object rolls over a surface, like roller skates and skateboards moves with rolling friction. Number 2, the sliding friction. It occurs when two objects runs against each other or slide against each other. So friction occurs on the surface of the wood and the sandpaper. Number 3, a fluid friction. A frictional force between moving objects and a liquid or between an object moving in the air. Fluid friction from both air and water opposes the motion of the sail. Number 4, static friction. It occurs in stationary objects or objects at rest. It prevents an object from moving against a surface. Static friction occurs between the book and the table. Thank you for watching this video. Now you have known the definition and the examples of friction and frictional force. So we can now tell it that friction is a force that cannot be defeated by any humanity kind. So friction is immortal.